Modern Horizons 3 is in full swing, and the modern meta is in a constant state of fluctuation as players start to brew up new decks or upgrade old decks with new tools. In today's episode of Modern Meta Breakdown, we're going to look over some of these new decks as well as some spicy cards to keep an eye out for, especially as we get closer to the Modern Pro Tour starting on June 28th. Now, all of these decks are subject to change between now and the Pro Tour, and most of these decks will have changed after the Pro Tour. But if you've been playing on MTGO or in-person weekly events like I have, you know there's a couple of key cards that players are building around. We essentially have two new decks rising up thanks to the Modern Horizons 3 and a bunch of old decks that have resurfaced thanks to new cards. First, we have Nadu combo, or Bant Nadu, which is a 3-card combo deck. Nadu Winged Wisdom is a 3-cost, 1 green and a blue for a 3/4 legendary bird wizard who makes it so all of your creatures have a triggered ability. This triggered ability says, whenever this creature becomes the target of a spell or an ability, reveal the top card of your library. If it's a land card, put it onto the battlefield. Otherwise, put it into your hand. This ability triggers only twice each turn. Now that twice each turn is for each creature. If you continue to make creatures, you don't have to worry as much about that line of text. The deck relies on Shuko, a 1-cost equipment that equips for 0, or Outrider and Core to continually trigger Nadu's effect, especially if you have the 3rd creature for the combo, Springheart Nantuko, which is an enchantment creature with landfall. We could also bestow that card, but that part isn't relevant to our game plan. Since Nadu lets us put the top card of our deck into our hand if it's non-land and place a land onto the battlefield, we're relying on Springheart's landfall ability to create a 1/1 green insect, which allows more creatures to use that 0-cost effect like Shuko or our Outrider and Core to continue revealing cards. Eventually, we'll cast Thassa's Oracle and win the game. There's a few variations running around as no player has found an optimized version yet. The two most popular versions are either a heavier green ramp with Wall of Roots and Delighted Halfling, or you go heavier blue with Harbinger of the Seas, Coiling Oracle, and Flare of Denial. We'll see which list comes out on top after the Pro Tour, but expect to see both variations running around. You can also check the description from our Moxfiled link for both versions of the deck. Next up, we have the energy list. Thanks to all the new energy tools, there are 2 aggressive decks that are getting brewed up. Either a Mardu version to give you access to Chthonian Nightmare, Orcish Bowmaster, and Sorin of House Markov, or you're running the pure red-white Boros energy build. Both versions rely on being fast to get out the gate and start to put pressure on you. Cards like Guide of Souls both generate energy. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 1 energy and 1 life. But it's also an energy sink later on, since you can pay 3 energy to put 2 +1/+1 counters and a flying counter on target attacking creature, allowing you to gain some evasion and really start to push for damage. Amped Raptor speeds up our clock with its ETB effect of generating 2 energy, then you reveal from the top of your library until you reveal a non-land, and then you can pay energy for the mana value or CMC to cast that card. Now you can only use Amp Raptor's ability if you cast it from your hand, so you can't just chain Amp Raptors together. The powerful non-energy creatures being run in both lists include Oscillate Pride, which synergizes extremely well when combined with Guide of Souls, generating you tons of value and a ton of cats. Since the beginning of your end step, if you gain life this turn, create a 1/1 white cat. You of course get to be able to make more if you have the City's Blessing, which in turn leads us into our second cat, which is Ajani Nakatl Pariah. For 1 and a white, you get a 1/2 cat warrior that ETB creates a 2/1 cat warrior. So if 1 or more cats die, you flip Ajani into the Nakatl Avenger and start going wide by putting a +1/+1 counter on each cat you control, or start creating more 2/1 cat tokens and start burning your opponent down. Speaking of burn, Flage, Titan of Fire's Fury, which is Lightning Helix on a body, is being run in both lists. It can ETB clear a pesky blocker or shoot 3 damage directly at a player to help close out the game. If the game goes longer, you can simply escape Flage by playing the double red, double white, and exiling 5 other cards from your graveyard. Alright, we've talked about the 2 newest decks to Modern. Let's talk about the updated decks. Storm is back from the dead, a deck that hasn't seen much play since before Modern Horizons 1 was printed in 2019, and it's gotten a whole new life with Ruby Storm. The deck gets its name from Ruby Medallion, a 2-cost artifact that reduces the cost of all red spells by 1 colorless mana. The deck gets a double up on this effect with the new flip planeswalker creature, Ral Monsoon Mage, turning all of our rituals into a 1 mana, generate 3 red mana. But what are we doing with all that mana? Well, we are going to start exiling the top cards of our library with cards like Glimpse the Impossible, Ren's Resolve, and Reckless Impulse. Once we've generated enough mana and a high enough storm count, we can wish for a way to defeat our opponents by pulling a card we need from our sideboard to win the game. Next up, we have Tron, which is getting its biggest shakeup since the One Ring was printed last year. Now, the Tron lists are still an artifact toolbox deck that can use Karn the Great Creator to pull artifacts from your sideboard to help you either stabilize or get more ahead in the game. The rest of the list, however, has turned more into a Tron Eldrazi list. Now, this isn't the old school version with Thought Knot Seer or Reality Smasher. No, we're utilizing Ugin's Labyrinth to generate extra mana by imprinting All Is Dust, Devourer of Destiny, or Emrakul the World Anew. Don't worry about imprinting them. This isn't a big deal with the deck since Ugin's Labyrinth can return the card back to your hand later in the game. The deck is shifting to a slowdown plan with cards like Chalice of the Void and Trinisphere to drag the game out and disrupt what your opponent is trying to do. We also get a new tool with Kozilek's Command, which gives us a mana sink with multiple options that we can pick 2 from. Do you want to generate more mana by creating X Eldrazi spawns? How about scrying X, then drawing a card? You can also exile a creature with mana value X or less. Or answer graveyard problems with exiling X cards from target graveyard. With so many new tools available, most players have completely dropped green, throwing Sylvan Scrying, Ancient Stirrings to the side in exchange for so many new colorless tools. Speaking of new tools, Murktide went through a makeover and returned to its Izzet roots with Snapcaster Mage in an Izzet control list. Okay, I know there are essentially 2 camps of Murktide now. The classic version with Ragavan, Dragon Rage Channeler, that has added the new counterspell with Invert Polarity, which is actually quite insane. You target a spell and flip a coin. If you win, you gain control of that spell. If you lose, you counter it. Talk about a win-win card. The other tool is Sink into Stupor, the MDFC that will return target spell to its owner's hand. Now, the Izzet control list fluctuates between having Murktide in it and not. Again, players are looking for the optimized list. However, all versions of the Izzet control list are rocking Tameo, the Inquisitive Student. Since she gains this card advantage every time she attacks, she creates clues. If you draw 3 cards in a turn, she can transform into Tameo, Seasoned Scholar, which weakens your opponent's attacking creatures or returns instants and sorceries back from your graveyard to your hand, which is even better than Flashback. She's also a wizard, which helps us since we're running 4 of Flame of Anor, giving us the chance to pick 2 out of these great choices. If target player draws 2 cards, destroying target artifact, or dealing 5 damage to target creature, which is also where Snapcaster comes in, pulling double duty with Flashback adventures for removal spells like Galvanic Discharge or counter spells. Honorable mentions. Now, these are specific Modern Horizons 3 cards that are starting to show up in lists that I didn't feel needed a full explanation. But if you want to know more details about these decks, let me know. Mono Red and Gruul Prowess decks are running Amped Raptor. There's a Through the Breach list that's running the new Ulamog the Defiler. Death Shadow lists are testing out Nethergoy for additional threats. Some are also testing out Psychic Frog or Tameo. Dredge lists are testing out the new land with Syphilid Coliseum and a new counterspell with Flare of Denial. What are you currently playing in Modern? Are there any decks or cards that are being tested out that didn't make the cut for this video? Leave a comment and let me know what you're playing in Modern right now. But that's going to do it for this episode, so keep an eye out for the Pro Tour coming up, and we'll be doing some discussions and review of deck lists to see what changes as players continue to test out and find the most optimized versions of decks. We also have weekly gameplay footage and commentary for you guys to enjoy on the channel, so if you guys haven't subscribed yet, please consider doing so. But that's going to do it for this episode. Thanks so much for tuning in and watching, and I'll see you all next game.